My shit's not made for kids. If you're curious to why the fuck I just said that, if you know jack crap shit about the whole animation community's whole YouTube nuking, um, that's why I'm saying that. I don't think I could get hit, but may as well just say it for the fuck of it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the 3 videos yesterday, because I was on a spree. I did like 8 cover arts. Uh, yep. Now, would you guys be interested in sneak peeks? Would you be interested in sneak peeks? An example of like, if I finish cover art, would you be interested in me posting the cover art to either my Tumblr or my posts? Would you be interested in that? Like and afterwards, would you like another one shot? Or would you like another series before? Because, like, first things first, I could just do a one shot bash. Because both of these series are very long. And they're going to take a while. I don't know. I want some opinions. Anyway, this is chapter 3 of How Not to Survive Your Pet Death Welder. Before you wonder if I'm going to take every excuse to draw Azawa, no, I just wanted to draw him for 2 thumbnails at most. There's only 12 possible, like, uh, cover arts for this first sector. Uh, anyway. Yeah, this is also by Katydid and Zayla Sweetbean. All the stuff will be in the description. And if you're curious about some interesting stuff, I did put on my posts some author I got permission from Katydid in the sense of blanket permission. So, whoa! Anyway, let's get to the fic. Inko considered herself a patient woman. She had raised the son with an unfortunate proclivity for danger, and for many years dealt with her whiny ex-husband. However, as the blue-skinned alien before her squawked and deflected her questions, she felt the few remaining threads of her patience beginning to snap. It had taken several cycles to repair the battered spaceship, then several more to return to the trading marketplace where Izuku had last been. She had scoured the marketplace, asking everyone she could about a young human male who last been seen there. Nobody wanted to talk. It wasn't until Inko accidentally broke a table by slamming her fist down in frustration that answers came. The last person to see Izuku had been a shop owner by the name of Doug. The translator might have taken some liberties with his name, who, after some incident at the marketplace, had abruptly moved away. Now, after tracking Doug down across the galaxy, the alien refused to speak to her. Inko fiddled with her translator, checking one last time that the machine wasn't the cause of the communication breakdown. In addition to stealing a ship, she'd also stolen one of Aldera's translators. And it wouldn't have surprised her if it had broken like the much of the other junk on the colony. However, the machine was functioning fine. Inko gritted her teeth. Where's the human boy? Doug shook his head, his many arms held out defensively. I know you saw him, she yelled, slamming her hands onto the table. The surface cracked, spiderweb fissures spreading out from the point of impact. A shrill screech escaped his mouth. and people around the marketplace began turning to look at them, one or two reaching for a weapon at their side. Ah, my apologies, a jovial voice interrupted. I just happened to notice your discussion. Is there any way I can help? Echo turned on her heel, ready to give the interrupter a piece of her mind, then stopped. Wild blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, a towering frame, a spacesuit designed in accents of red, blue, and yellow. One of Izuku's comics can't come to life. All Might. The shop owner breathed in relief. Thank goodness. All Might chuckled loudly and placed his hand on his hips. In the flesh, he declared. You're skinnier than in the comics, Inga blurted out, and immediately covered her mouth with her hands. All Might rubbed his neck sheepishly. Are they still making those things? I always thought that I looked like a musclehead in them, but the publisher called it creative license. Still, you know me, that makes things easier. So what's the problem? This creature, Doug said, came up out of nowhere and started interrogating me about some human attack I barely survived. Human attack? Yes, it gorged itself on my wares, wrecked my table, and terrified my customers. Only after it had thoroughly destroyed my business did it pass out. Miyazuki would never. Inko said in outrage. You're Zuko? All Might asked. Miyazuki, my son, Inko said, tears beginning to form. He was sent to purchase food, but never returned. I've been trying to find him, and this person is the last one to have seen him, and he won't tell me where he is. All Might considered Doug. Where is the human boy? He asked. Doug shook his head and waved his many arms in refusal. All Might had been smiling the entire time, though his lips remained closed. Slowly his lips parted, revealing glistening white teeth spread in a smile. Where's the human? He repeated. Deadly calm radiated off of him, a warning that was not answered his question. A warning that not answering his question was the wrong answer. I don't know, Doug whimpered. The station manager dealt with the containment and removal. I don't know where they would have taken it. At the very least, far, far away. Where is the station manager? He recently retired. Apparently, he inherited a large sum of money and moved away to a paradise planet, Gahaj, to enjoy it. I promise, though, that's all I know. Go ask the station manager. Just leave me out of it. All right, sir, All Might said, his lips closing to hide his teeth and his smile becoming light-hearted. Your help is much appreciated. Come along now, he said, prodding gently on Inko's back. All Might led her through the marketplace with ease. His massive form should have stood out, but the man hunched his shoulders, tucked his limbs in close, and pulled his hood up over his head, once again becoming another figure in the crowd. I need to go back, Inko hissed. I'm sure he's hiding information, or at least lying. My boy would never do such a thing. I don't think you're going to get anything else out of him, All Might said, guiding her through an exit in the marketplace. And even if he is lying, there's little we can currently do. Your son is our immediate focus. Our? Inko asked. All Might paused and turned to face her. The The hood covered most of his face, but his blue eyes shone through. Of course, that's what a hero does. They help. That is, of course, if you'll accept my aid. After being betrayed by the Aldera colony, Inko's trust was in short supply. She didn't know All Might outside the comics, and those had already proven to be exaggerated, at least in regards to his appearance. Yet she also had to face reality. On her own, her chances of saving Izuku were slim. With All Might, those odds increased drastically. All right, Inko said, fixing All Might with a piercing glare. I'll allow you to help, but cross me once and I will kill you. All Might laughed. I wouldn't dream of it. As soon as Izuku was alone, he examined his stolen prize. The flat silver square was definitely a key card, but he could not figure out what it was supposed to open. No matter how Izuku roamed the island, he could not find a lock to insert the key. Likely, All for One's key opened a door off the island. It would only do Izuku good if he could get out of here. Or maybe the key just or maybe the key opened some useless storage area. But Azuka considered it worth burying the key in the dirt next to the food dispenser, just in case. When All for One returned, Azuka was fairly certain the alien was looking for his key card. But All for One did no more than a cursory scan of the ground before giving up. He did not interrogate Izuku. Perhaps there was a small advantage to being treated like a dumb animal. He did not punish Izuku, thank goodness. Just remembering the metal box gave him cold shivers. It was for the best. But this also confirmed Izuku's fears. The key could not unlock anything immediately useful for escape. Izuku tried to pickpocket All for One again, but the alien had caught on and treated it like a game, when All for One could easily use the drugs from his tentacles to freeze Izuku. The games were always rigged in his favor. All for One treated everything like a game. If Izuku played along, then All for One would have him chasing after balls and running around the island. If Izuku fought back, then All for One sparred with him for a bit before paralyzing him. Humans were known throughout the galaxy for being extremely tough. Izuku had been shocked when he first learned that most species considered a broken bone a fatal injury. It could barely believe humans kept moving on, even on one broken leg. Most aliens could not last as long as humans without food, and lacked the same toughness and agility. But All for One was clearly a fellow Death Worlder. Even without the cheat of his tentacles, he could overpower Zuko in battle. Human body fluids had acidic properties for many species, but Azuku's sweat and spittle did little to All for One's hard shell. The alien was larger and much stronger. These fights always ended with Izuku paralyzed and being cuddled. All for One would hiss a meaningless note that Izuku was almost completely certain translated in his own language as cute. Everything Izuku did got called cute. If Izuku played along with All for One's games in an attempt to lower his guard, he was cute. If Izuku's temper snapped and he tried to gut his captor with a tree branch, he was cute. That one time, Izuku carefully prepared a pantomime attempt at communication to try to appear to the equivalent of a heart inside his fellow Death Worlder. He was cute. When Izuku broke down sobbing because he missed his mother and he was so damn tired, cute, cute, cute. Izuku had come to hate the alien sound of that word. Every time a soft hiss and the magic affection in All for One's eyes made the hair on the back of Izuku's neck stand up and his fingers curve into claws. And every single encounter with All for One ended the same way. Izuku wrapped up in All for One's tentacles and cuddled. Whether he'd been drugged first or not made no difference to the alien. It felt dehumanizing. Izuku hated how All for One always had fun. He hated being treated like a pet. Most of all, he hated how his fingers trembled each time he summoned the courage to fight back, because he still feared ending up back in the box. At least his new cage was better than the box, the source of Izuku's ongoing nightmares. But just about anything was better than being tortured. Izuku's small bit of gratitude wore off quickly. He tried playing along. He tried appeasing his captor. And he tried communicating. It hadn't worked. Clearly, All for One had no interest in anything his pet had to say. Any resistance got Izuku drugged again. But Izuku had noticed that the paralyzing effect of the tentacles wore off a tiny bit faster each time. He was slowly building up an immunity. If he could not bargain his way out of this cage, then he would fight. He would prove that he wasn't a cute pet. Getting close to the human was harder than Ozawa had anticipated. Slipping away from his work group was easy. All he had to do was complain of a strained shoulder or say he was going to check on the Biodev org lip department, which was completely made up, and his bosses would nod distractedly and shoo him along. The number one rule to information infiltration was to act confident, so Ozawa slouched through the hallways with a bored expression, as if merely walking along the restricted floors was beneath him. The ruse worked, but only got so far. Surveillance of the human was restricted to All for One, his insane doctor, and a select few of the League, none of whom Ozawa wanted to get too close to. That left him with the unpleasant option of scouting out the cage. Except All for One, in a move of either extreme ego or idiocracy, had created an enclosure for the human resting on top of his own underwater living quarters. In theory, it made sense. All for One could check on the human whenever he wanted, and since the human wasn't aquatic, it couldn't attack him through the water. However, Ozawa would struggle to sleep with such a dangerous death worlder resting above him. Resting above. Ozawa glowered at the metal door to the entrance, flipping the borrowed keycard through his paws. With a tap, the metal door would open, the force field shut down, and the walkway extended, and Ozawa could carefully sneak in for a better look. Instinctively, he reached for his capture weapon and winced at the lack. The capture weapon made him too identifiable for the mission, but he would have liked to have it, even if Ozawa suspected it would do little against a human. Glancing at his communicator, Ozawa made up his mind. He needed to see the human, and this was the perfect window to do so. Tapping the card, he dashed through the open door and downed force field before it flickered back up, blocking his axis again. He'd be fine, since he had the keycard, but speed was necessary. Spying on the human would blow his cover, and he'd have to be prepared to escape immediately after. But this was important enough to justify it. The walkway slid across, connecting the frigid water to the small island. Claws clicking on the metal, Zawa slunk across. A chill ran through his fur, and Azawa slipped into a defensive position. But he wasn't quick enough to respond to the screeching human that sprinted from the island across the walkway at a terrifying speed while wielding a tree branch. With a yowl, Azawa leapt back, forgetting where he was, and plunged into the freezing water. On Earth, Izuku had seen videos of pet cats being forced into baths. They looked exactly as unhappy as the feline alien flopping and shrieking in the cold water. At first, it was a little bit funny. Then the alien's head dipped below the water, and Izuku realized he couldn't swim. Izuku had every rational reason to leave the alien to drown. All his captors had treated him like a dumb animal or a monster. They didn't deserve his sympathy. Izuku didn't know why the strange new alien had invaded his enclosure, but given how he shrieked at the sight of Izuku, he didn't seem like a rescuer. Even more importantly, this was Izuku's biggest chance to escape with the bridge down. His mother was waiting for him to come home. It would be foolish for him to save an alien who might attack him and thwart his escape attempt. But the alien had made such a sad, frightened gurgle as he gone under. It had broken Izuku's heart, and Izuku's hands had moved faster than his brain. He reached out with his makeshift tree branch club, offering aid. The feline alien immediately latched onto the branch with his claws. Adrenaline gave Izuku the surge of energy needed to lift the alien onto solid land. Coughing up and shivering, the alien crouched on the ground. Still fearing that he might be attacked, Izuku did not give the alien time to recover. He did not bother to try and wrestle back his tree branch from the alien's claws either. He turned and ran. Izuku spared a brief moment to wish he had time to dig up the keycard. Hopefully he wouldn't need that. He spent his seconds saving one of his captors. Instead, he'd lost his weapon too. Perhaps his act of mercy had been foolish, but Izuku knew he'd done what All Might would have. That didn't stop Izuku from leaving the alien behind as he ran at the strange yellow field. The alien had people who could rescue him. Izuku did not. As soon as Izuku hit the yellow sparks, a shock struck him so deep it rattled his teeth. His muscles spasmed. He could no longer run, but he kept putting one foot in front of the other. If the alien behind him caught up, then he would regret his mercy. His body felt numb, his vision blurred, his hair stood on end. Mom? Izuku had to make it back home to his mother. Sparks danced around his clothing. He could smell the singed threads, but he did not dare look down. Everything hurt. His entire body narrowed to continue on. On the other end of the field, he gasped, sucking in fresh air. He barely managed to grip the metal door and slam it behind him. Shakara fidgeted nervously as he hurried to the breach in the human's cage. Behind him, two members of the League followed. Toga bounced eagerly, her body jiggling with the movement, and Dobby slunk after, dressed in his impeccable jacket. Shakara had nearly brought a jacket in a similar style, but none came for its 6 arms. I can't believe we get to see the human, Toga giggled. Tomura hadn't let us see it yet, but I think it's so cute. What do you think? She asked Shinka. No. Shinkana's pinchers clicked in nerves. Security detail watching the human had been ridiculously easy, with the creature lounging, pacing, eating, or playing with all for one. Saka had lost interest after several boring shifts. Thankfully, several of the raw guards had been playing card games while monitoring, and had missed when one of the idiots from the loading dock snuck down to the human's cage, probably for a closer look on a dare, and accidentally let it out. It'll be fine, Dobby drawled, his eyes half lidded in boredom. Worst case scenario, the human killed the idiot who snuck in. Then the human ran across the walkway, but there's no way the human got past the force field. Turning the corner to the sanctuary entrance, Shinka slid to a stop, his claws reflexively lifting in fear at the sight of the human outside the glowing force field. That monster had just run straight through a force field. It was impossible. It was a miracle. It was a nightmare. That thing just walked through? A force field wasn't a cloth curtain. It was an impenetrable barrier capable of stopping a plasma blaster. That nightmare creature couldn't be flesh and blood. He remembered suddenly that all the raw guards on the smuggler ship had been killed or maimed, exoskeletons ripped from their bodies. Shinkai had gotten his exoskeleton polished only last week. However, one, then two, finally three blinks passed, and Shinkai-kun was alive. He looked again at the human and realized it lay prone on the metal ground. The strange fur on its head poofed out in every direction. There was no twitching or growls, nothing to suggest the human had survived its passage through the force field. Oh shit, Dobby swore. It's dead. No! I wanted to see the human when it was alive, Toga whined. I'm amazed it isn't roasted to a crisp. That barrier had a high voltage. Most species couldn't touch it without severely burning themselves. To have gotten through without turning into ash is impressive. Shinka eyed the glowing force field. Even from the distance, he could feel the power rippling off of it and wanted no part of it. The human had to be beyond stupid to willingly push itself through. Dobby sighed. All for One is going to have constipation constipation when he hears about how his pet died. Shinka flinched. As a security guard in charge of monitoring of the human, he'd face the blunt of All for One's wrath. Although, judging by the grim looks on Dobby and Toga's faces, they would as well. The human shuddered, and all three gave a sigh of relief. The human wasn't dead. Toga had always liked cute things. Her species, the Fritids, were made of large, energy-dense cells that could rapidly change their structure. In her natural state, she looked like a yellow gelatinous blob with 4 limbs and a giant mouth in her midsection. She was constantly consumed by hunger because shapeshifting took a lot of energy. Although Toga could shift into any form about her size, her second mouth always remained with its layers of black teeth. Toga had wanted to become the human the moment she laid eyes on it. The pet was adorable, with its glistening green eyes and bouncy head fur. In order to shapeshift, she needed a bit of its DNA. Just one little nibble. All for One would never notice. She was pretty sure humans could grow back their fingers. All her attempts to get into the enclosure had been rebuffed. She hadn't even been able to bribe the guards, because they were too scared of All for One and the human. But now all of her lurking around the cage and looking for a closer glimpse had finally paid off. The adorable little human lay on the ground, so close she could kneel down and take a bite. Any damage to the pet could be blamed on the escape attempt. Dobby prodded the human with his hind claw. Should we apply medical aid or something? Aw, you care, Toga cheered, hopping up and down with a sloshing sound. Dobby scowled. I'm just afraid of how the boss will react. That thing is so pitiful. Looks like it might die again if we leave it laying there. But Toga knew that Dobby thought the human was cutish too, or he wouldn't have accompanied her trying to take a peek. Dobby species like small fleshy pets. Both of them, actually. Dobby had been born of a marriage between two different species. His mother a feline form from a snow planet, and his father a cold-blooded reptilian from a desert planet. As a result, his purple scales and had patches of fur. He'd gotten the worst of both biology. A ton of different autoimmune disorders attacking his organs, nerves, and joints, and giving him a crooked posture. He was in constant agony, which explained why he was so grumpy, in Toga's opinion. No temperature was comfortable for him. He resented his parents for ever deciding to reproduce. At least he had claws and a powerful tail. Toga's slime trail crept towards the human. Dobby glared at her. If you hurt it, you'll get in trouble with All for One. Just one nibble, Toga pleaded, her second mouth snapping at the human's hand. A bit of drool slipped from her mouth and landed on the human's skin. The human's eye snapped open. It punched Toga squarely in her mouth. Toga had never felt such agony before. No creature had ever dared to brave her many rows of teeth to strike her with such unnerving precision. She fell backwards, slamming into the metal wall. Her gelatinous body flattened. Her head ached as she struggled to hold on to consciousness. Toga Dobby gaped. What happened, Toga? Did you get indigestion? Oh no. The raw guard backed away, fiddling with his plasma blaster. There's only three of us. Dobby laughed. Two of us are League members. He advanced on the human, claws extended. Go back to your cage quietly before you get hurt, little guy. The human spun and kicked Dobby in the head. Then the human lunged past and punched the guard in the exoskeleton. As he fell, the guard wailed some nonsense about recent polishing. Huh, this thing is looking less cute. Dobby shook off the blow, his teeth snapping. Then he moved. Although Dobby might be a mess of internal damage, he was fast. Before the human had time to turn around, Dobby struck him open-handed across the face. The tiny creature reeled and fell. Dobby grabbed the human and lifted him up by the collar, purring. Sorry, I don't play as nice as All for One. You're not dead, are you? The human had a red print on his cheek and a cut on his shallow lip. He spat his acidic blood straight into Dobby's eye. Dobby stumbled backwards, screaming in pain. Struggling to reform her body, Togo whispered, "It's not just cute, it's beautiful." Tears of joy formed in the corners of her eyes. This thing was a monster. It was the walking incarnation of death and destruction. She might have found her soulmate. The human kicked Dobby's throat, cutting off his screams and knocking him to the ground. Blood sprayed across his beloved jacket when the human kicked Toga in the head. Before her consciousness faded away, she saw it snatch the plasma blaster from the fallen guard. Hardcore, she thought. Azuka ran down the hallway. Currently, there was only one direction to go. But he needed a plan if he had any hope of escaping this place. He still didn't even know if he was on a planet or a space station. The walls gleamed silver and metallic, making it slightly more likely he was in space. The air smelled filtered, but that didn't prove anything because a place with many different species often adjusted the breathability of the air. Light panels glowed overhead. The main hallway branched out. Izuku hesitated. It would be safer to go down one of the narrower passages, but he followed the main hallway, then he was more likely to reach a central hub. There might be information, or, better yet, a spaceship bay. Azuka's goal wasn't just to escape his enclosure, it was to get home. He had to take the risk. He followed the main hallway. In the distance, an alarm sounded. Azuka must have caused that. He ran faster. Unfortunately, he ran straight into another group of insectoid guards. Azuka had learned how to handle them after fighting so many. Once they were on their backs, they couldn't get up. The plasma blaster had triggered and the wheel on its side. The plasma blaster had a trigger and a wheel on the side. With a little trial and error, he figured out the maximum strength setting and left the guards in smoking heap behind him. The guards had been standing in front of a metal door, so Izuku presumed it must have something important on the other side. He stole a keycard off a fallen guard and opened it. A couple of aliens sat in front of computers. They took one look at the fallen guards, then ran with a series of howls and chitters. Azuku let them go. He didn't need any unnecessary fights, and the alarm was already screaming about his presence. Damn it. Azuku had no idea how to use any of these computers. The desks were too tall for him, and the keys didn't seem made for human fingers. He ran down the aisle, pressing buttons randomly. A grinding sound came from one of the walls, but he ignored it. Another button triggered a second screeching alarm. Yet another button made the entire room slide sideways. How interesting. He must be in some sort of control room. After several hundred button presses, Izuku finally got lucky. A map popped up on the screen, complete with a glowing red dot at his current location. As suspected, he was on a space station. The spaceship, the ship bay, was on the other side of the station, but there were escape pods located all around. Izuku memorized the route to the closest escape pod. Spraying his blaster in an arc, Izuku shot all the computers. Hopefully, he would damage something important in the control room. If possible, he wanted to destroy the station too badly for them to come after him. It was a calculated risk. Azuka knew he might destroy something that would hurt himself, but he also knew that he had no chance of escaping in a tiny weaponless pod unless he could ensure the station had bigger concerns than recapturing him. As All Might had once quoted from Earth, "Give me liberty or give me death." Izuku didn't want to find out what punishment he might face if he was recaptured. He would not go back in the box. With explosions echoing behind him, Izuku ran for the escape pods. Tomura heard the human before finding him. The sound of explosions pierced his sensitive canine ears. What were those fools doing? Where were the other League members? If Toga and Dabi had found the human, then surely the pet would have been recaptured. But currently, Tomura only had Twice by his side. Not that Twice wouldn't be enough. His people, the Censors, were Category 1 Death Worlders. Amphibious crustaceans from from a marsh planet. They naturally had twins as a survival tactic. The twins were so close that they didn't even recognize themselves as two beings, just one entity. That could also make them annoying. Twice's left head complained, "Can't the guards handle this?" And the right one said, "This will be fun. We'll finally get to see the human." What was he like in person? Did he smell? "I didn't notice at the time. Too much violence," Tomura grumbled as he stepped over guard bodies to the open control room door. A scene of carnage greeted him. The monitors had been blasted to pieces. Was the human stupid or completely insane? The damage could have accidentally voided the space station's oxygen, or sent them careening into a meteor belt. Even worse, this meant the human had a weapon. Tomura's fur stood up all over as he remembered his last battle with the human. Briefly, he considered going back to his room and pretending he hadn't heard the alarm over the sound of his games. The human must be close. Twice took off down the hallway, even as his other had complained, or he could be faster than us. Loyalty to his friend kept Tomura from going forward. Dabi and Toga would be in so much trouble for not even showing up to the fight. He reminded himself the human probably didn't understand how to shoot a plasma blaster and had just gotten lucky. The two of them caught up with the human on his shorter legs. Tomura gave Reason one last try, shouting, "Stop! You're outnumbered and you're never gonna make it off the station." The ugly pet turned around. Using a plasma blaster took years of training. But that didn't bother the human. It was unnaturally speed. With an unnatural speed, the creature shoved its creepy appendages into the trigger and set off a yellow blast, deadly to most species. "It's insane!" Twice's right head said. "No, it's brilliant!" The left one said. "No, it's firing at us! Get down!" Another shot slammed into the wall by their head, singeing the metal and sending a melted clump to the ground. Most sentient species wouldn't jump immediately to the highest setting of the plasma blaster, if only because the weapon tended to explode at that setting and kill the user. However, either the human didn't know that, or didn't care, because 5 more shots were sent their way. "Where is Master?" Tomura yelled. He was being trained to manage part of All for One's massive empire. But this... he hadn't been trained to deal with. He had fought Deathworlders before. However, he doubted he would be the human in a one-on-one fight. Charge! Voices yelled from behind, and Tomura watched in horror as a squad of Nomu soldiers ran down the hallway, plasma blaster raised. Shoot the human, they yelled, and a burst of blue blasts fired at the human. Snarling, the human fired back, ducking and rolling to dodge the blasts. Are we saved? Twice's left head said. A yellow blast slammed into the closest Nomu soldier, flinging it back into the wall with a sickening crunch. No, we're dead, Twice's right head said. Tomura should be racing into battle. He had his DK weapon. Surely, an organic life form would fall before it. But his legs wouldn't move. The Nomu soldiers were genetically modified, an attempt of All for One's insane doctor to create lab-brewed Deathworlders. Most galaxy species would die instantly against one, but the human was holding off 7 of them. This couldn't get worse, Tomura thought. A blast from the human went wide, firing up to the ceiling and directly into the mechanicals controlling gravity on that portion of the space station. Instantly, they began to slip away from the floor, despite desperately scrambling at it. Maybe it won't be able to fight, Twice's left head said, with stupidly blind optimism. However, like a creature rising from the burning pits of Tomura's homeworld, the Deathworlder went flying into the air. Flipping itself midair, the human fired at the ground, sending its body careening into the ceiling. However, before it could be turned into mushy paste, it spun, kicked off the surface, and back towards the Nomu soldiers. For their part, the Nomu soldiers spun in zero gravity, unable to right themselves as the human sent a barrage of blasts after them. Shoot! Shoot! No, Tomura screamed. A blast hit a Nomu soldier in the chest, spattering hot ichor across the pristine walkway. That worked better than any order ever could, as the soldiers desperately began firing again. One blast hit the human in the leg, eliciting a hiss, but the creature shook it off. We're so dead, Twice's right head said. Tomura couldn't agree more. The battle with the human had slowly pushed them further down the hallway and closer to the escape pods, which, judging by the glint in the human's eyes, it knew. Swearing in Shimura, Tomura's home language, he flailed in the air and clumsily pushed off the wall down to the floor, flicking the switch. Tomura slammed his decay weapon into the ground and directed the destruction towards the escape pods. The human's creepy eyes flicked towards and narrowed in a fury. It aimed the plasma blaster towards him, ready to take Tomura out. But the poor weapon had suffered too much abuse. It exploded with a crackling sound, sizzling energy ricocheting through the hallway and rendering the remaining Nomu soldiers unconscious. Only Tomura and Twice, who had been further from the blast's epicenter, remained conscious. But as the energy slammed into him, Tomura knew he'd be feeling it for days to come. Re-establishing gravity, the computer's cheery voice said. The floating nose soldiers, Twice and the human fell to the ground, with Twice crashing into Tomura. They couldn't have done that sooner, Twice's right head said. The left one only groaned. Ah. Wincing at the pain, Tomura staggered upright, only remembering to switch his decay weapon off at the last minute. 4 of the Nomu soldiers were critically injured, and the pungent smell of burns filling the air, but the other 3 were dead. The doctor would be displeased, Tomura thought, but upsetting the doctor paled in comparison to upsetting Master. The human could not be allowed to escape, except now it lay limp on the ground, its disturbing flat face pressed against the floor, and its limbs sprawled out. Is it dead? Both of Twice heads asked. Tomura wasn't sure which would be worse, taking the punishment from All for One if the human was dead, or if the human survived and they had to keep living with it. The human took a shuddering breath, and then its eyes peeled open, a toxic green almost glowing. It's a monster. Tomura breathed in horror. It's perfect, All for One said. Tomura stiffened, bracing himself for a blow, but his master walked calmly past, over to the stirring human. It snarled at him, but Ulfrun merely laughed. Positioning himself over the human, he used his scaled limbs to press the human's head into the ground. The human gnashed its teeth and flailed its limbs, but Ulfrun carefully pinned them down. Silently he watched, a small smile on his face while the creature fought and thrashed, letting loose chilling screeches. A couple of times the human managed to claw at All for One's hide, drawing out beads of black ichor. But All for One adjusted his grip and continued smiling. Such a grumpy thing, All for One cooed. Small, grumpy thing, trying to be so scary. Although the human didn't have the mental capacity to understand speech, it must have understood the tone behind All for One's words as it screeched, threw All for One's hold off its head, and sank its teeth into All for One's hand. Beside Tomura, Twice whimpered. Such an offense was worthy of instant death. But All for One laughed, his pointed teeth flashing. Oh, you are perfect, he said, forcing the human to open its jaws and release him. Fighting was a sign of endearment on All for One's home planet, Morschlach, Morschel, which was probably why the species was practically extinct. No wonder he liked the human, Tomura thought in numb horror. Perfect, Tomura repeated, his voice a whisper. It escaped an inescapable cage. All for One must have heard, because he turned his head. Of course, it performed better than I expected. Tomura's hands shook as he stared at his insane boss. So little is known about these humans. Testing its limits is essential. Who knew it could run through a force field or take on a Nomu soldier? Still, to almost escape, he shook his head with a grin. I'll need a full report from you and all the footage. A strangled noise escaped Tomura's mouth as all the aches, bruises, and pains of the human's attempted escape pressed into him. And now, All for One said, turning his attention back to the still thrashing human, let's get you back to your cage. A Make time! False memory. Tomura, maybe the human isn't as scary as I remember. The League can handle him. Dabi, ah! My eyes! Tomura. Uh, someone saved me? So that's the end of this chapter. Um, I will say there are some fucking awesome art for this on Tumblr by Dragon Army. Like, genuinely, some of the best art I've seen. But at the same time, I'm an art nerd, and I love art. So, art is great to me, no matter what. Oh, it looks like they added, like, their, added little, like, thingy over a bunch of their art. Like a little watermark. But yeah, I love their art. It is so pretty. I recommend checking it out. Uh, the fic should be in the description so you can take a look at that because it's in the notes. And I'm gonna say it right now. All for One is creepy as fuck. Okay, in this fic especially. Okay, which makes sense. This is basically obsessed All for One. Think about it. It is. Instead of a vault, though, it's pet. It's the pets, but it's so good. It's so good. Honestly, there's a bunch of little. If you like this kind of style of fics, this is technically an abnormal one. This is a humans or space orc fic. That's why they're a death worlder. And I had to explain what this was to somebody. So yeah, basically, for anyone that doesn't know, that's still here and hasn't taken a guess at it, humans or space orcs is the equivalent of Earth is space Australia. And we're the equivalent of those spiders. Not really the spiders, but you get the idea. Like, we're the equivalent of, oh shit, that thing is going to kill you in some bizarre way. I don't want to find out. That's why everything is about, like, wet tissue paper to Izuku. Well, kind of. All for One is another Death Worlder. He's a category 4. And he is stronger than the average. It's been mentioned a few times in these chapters. But anyway, you guys kind of got lucky that I felt like it recording. But anyway, I am curious though. I asked this at the beginning, but I know some people are skipping those. Uh, do you want sneak peeks? Because I did like a shit ton of cover art yesterday. I practically did only cover art because I couldn't write. I wanted to be productive. So I did like 8. Let me go look. I did a lot. Writing core, look what I did. Where the fuck is it? Okay, cover art. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. Yeah, I did 6 that day with 1 failure that I won't show. Those are all thumbnails. 2 of them are for kind of new series. One's a one-shot, the other's a series. So would you guys like sneak peeks? Genuine question. Like, I'll post like a photo on the thing. Or even your votes determine what I do next. I'll just show the first chapter or thumbnail or whatever. And you guys can take a wild guess. Technically I still have to do cover art for 1 more. But you know, actually I have to do cover art for a few more. Right? I did that one. Let me take a look here. Pika log. Uh, Actually, I have to do cover art for 2 more series, at least. Not series, one-shots. But anyway, I should shut the fuck up now. Thank you for chilling out with me. Bye! Oh yeah, we have bloopers. human bodily functions, beside toga, beside Tomura. Okay,